Today's webinar is really a sequel of sort because we had the muscle energy techniques osteopathy perspective, and I want to bring the physical therapy perspective because we physical therapists, we are actually learning and imbibing the approach from osteopathy, and we need to know physical therapy perspective how we can fit it so that we can be the best physical therapist by learning that technique rather than ditching physical therapy and going to become an osteopath. Okay, so this physical therapy perspective is highlighted and will be elaborated, okay, or be rather brainstormed by the best physical therapist as a learner, as a very sincere learner and a very cheerful learner. You can see her happiness when she gets to know something new. When the new information comes, her face automatically lights up. Okay, and very energetic, they ever dynamic, and the general secretary of the Academy of Orthopedic Manual Physical Therapists, none other than Dr. Darshana Jani. And we are going to listen to madam, and we are going to listen fully to ma'am. Okay, I will not be interrupting because it's not a student activity forum. Okay, and she's already taken the webinars for the AOMPT, and we are actually eagerly looking forward to have more and more sessions from madam. So as equally as all the members of the AOMPT who are here and also the guest participants who are joining in now, definitely as the session moderator, I am also eager to interact and emerge best knowledge out of the muscle energy techniques for the profession of physical therapy. So good luck to Dr. Darshana. Over to you, ma'am. I will enable the slide sharing. Yes, Dr. Darshana, you are ready to load the slide. I will enable the unmute also. Yes. Visible. Okay, right.
Visible, sir? Am I audible?
You're audible.
Can you hear visible? So, can I start, sir?
Yes, please. Sure. Go ahead.
Good evening, sir, and a big thank you for giving me this opportunity today to take this webinar. Good evening to all the participants who have shared their time from the busy schedule and who are here to listen to me. A big thank you to all of you. So, I'll be taking you through the muscle energy technique from the physical therapist perspective today. We have already heard Dr. Shilpa before yesterday when she talked about osteopathic perspective, anything from the osteopathic perspective. And I'll be taking you to the physical therapist perspective. I will be, she has covered most of the points, so I'm not going to go into too many details. But yes, whatever is important, what I said was important, I have definitely put down, and I'm sure it will be helpful for you all to understand the topic. So, yeah. So I want to go into much of the history of MET. MET was basically the father of MET is Dr. Fred Mitchell. Uh, he developed this technique in the year 1948. We saw his friend, Dr. Rudy, who was an osteopathic, doing osteopathic manipulation, and from there he got his idea of developing muscle energy technique after developing techniques for the pelvic dysfunction, and further he took it over for developing the techniques for the vertebral column as well as for other joints. His son, Dr. Frederick Mitchell Jr., further developed these techniques, and since then, this MEP course, in fact, the topic was taken into the physiotherapy curriculum as well. Okay, uh, by many other physicians who worked on this concept and developed this concept over the years. So energy concept basically was designed to improve the musculoskeletal function through mobilization of joints and strengthening of the tight muscles and fascia to reduce pain and to improve circulation and lymphatic flow. So let's come to the definition and the principles of NAP. The definition of this, as it mentions, that it is defined as form of soft tissue treatment in which the patient's muscles are actively used on request from a precisely controlled position in a specific direction and against a distinctly executed therapist applied contour. So what do we mean by these terms? The very important aspect is it is an active technique. So the patient has to be involved uh, when we are applying this concept or when we are doing this technique. Next is we have to understand the restrictive barrier first of the muscle, right? Very precisely. So from that position and in a very specific direction of the movement, the technique has to be given. And very important aspect, the pressure or the resistance applied by the therapist, which is again a very important aspect of the technique. So three important terminology here: precisely controlled position, active involvement by the patient, specific direction, and the therapist resistance or the counterpart. So the principles of muscle energy technique. Muscle energy technique, as I already mentioned, that's a manual therapy technique where first the subject muscle own energy in the form of gentle isometric contraction is utilized to basically relax the muscle via two methods, which we can say. One is autogenic or autogenic inhibition or reciprocal inhibition, and this helps to lengthen the muscle. As I already mentioned, MET is an active technique in which the patient participant is very important. Unlike static stretching, which normally we perform, where the therapist does all the work, the therapist only stretches and there is no work from the subject or the patient, right? Whereas in MET, active participation of the patient is very important. So let's come to what is autogenic inhibition. As I mentioned that it works on two principles. One is autogenic inhibition and reciprocal inhibition. So what is autogenic inhibition? When submaximal, what I mean by submaximal is in MET we use only around around 10 to 25% of the isometric contraction from the patient, or the resistance what we apply is not to the maximum, right? It is, that is why it is mentioned as submaximal contraction of the muscle is followed by stretching of the same muscle. It is known as autogenic inhibition. Whereas in reciprocal inhibition, the submaximal contraction of the muscle is followed by stretching of the opposite muscle. We will see both these we will see both these types further in detail. But I would just like to mention that reciprocal inhibition, again, it is the submaximal contraction of the muscle, which is followed by stretching of the opposite muscle. Further, so what are the physiological effects? What do we look for as physical therapists? So the first thing, there are two main objectives. The first objective is pain modification. Okay, definitely that's a really important thing. What every patient comes to us for reduction of pain. So the first objective is pain modification. Now this is when by muscle-centered innervation via ascending and descending neurological pathways, following activation of muscle and joint mechanoreceptors during isometric contraction. Next is when a muscle contracts. We all know that when a muscle contracts, it stimulates fluid flow, so it increases the drainage from interstitial spaces, and definitely that leads to reduction in pain or reduction in inflammation, reduces pain. The next is it also reduces the concentration of slow inflammatory cytokines. Now, what do I mean by these? These are mediators which increase inflammation. Cytokines are the mediators which increase inflammation. So when we apply MET technique, there is reduction in the concentration of these cytokines, and thereby it reduces pain. That's the thing. Also, most important thing is there is release of pain inhibiting substances like encephalins and endorphins, which again give important substances which reduce pain. The next thing, as a physical therapist, when we work with muscles and joints, is most of the time there is a restriction of movement, which leads to restriction of mobility of the joint. The range of motion of the joint is reduced, thereby affecting the functional abilities of the subject. So MET, the again secondary primary objective of MET is to enhance mobility. Now, how this occurs? When we apply the MET technique, there is a stretching of the sarcomeres, which is present in the muscle, and during isometric contraction, increasing the length of the muscle, uh, particularly if active or passive stretching follows after MET. So it's just not the technique, but yes, we have to advise the patient like home-bound programs also to maintain or to maintain the flexibility whatever we have achieved with MET to what we say to increase their functional ability. This mechanism also involves a reduction in the fluid content of the facial structure following muscle contraction, leading to a temporary increase in the ease of movement of associated muscles or joints. We already know that whenever there is restriction, I mean to say there's a myofascial restriction, there are changes in the elastin, the collagen, and also the cellular fluids which are present, right? And when there are changes here, MET definitely helps into uh, a free flowing fluid inside, which reduces pain. Yeah. So now a little bit of details about what is oxygenic and reciprocal inhibition. So I won't go into what is GPOs and what is muscle sphincter and all, because that is the basics we've already learned, right? So in autogenic inhibition, see now both these autogenic inhibition and reciprocal inhibition, both these principles, uh, both occur when certain muscles are inhibited from contracting due to activation of the Golgi tendons and the muscle spindles. Now both these structures, they are the proprioceptors, which are located in and around the joint and muscles, and they respond to changes. Now Golgi tendon is response to the force and tension, right? And the muscle spindles, they respond to the stretch stimulus. Okay, we will further see how this works. So in autogenic inhibition, the Golgi tendon, as I mentioned, it is located between the muscle belly and the tendon. Okay. Now, when you apply a force, that is, when it senses there is increased tension, that is, when we apply a force, the GPO it senses the increased tension and the muscle contracts. Okay, or stretches. Now, when the muscle contracts, the Golgi tendon is activated and responds by inhibiting this contraction. Okay. I will further tell you how this mechanism works. I'm just telling you first what it is, and then I'll explain in detail how it actually takes place. So, So very important to remember this, that in autogenic inhibition, the Golgi tendons, they are stimulated. Okay, and that causes a relaxation of the muscle. Next is the reciprocal inhibition, where the muscle spindles are what do you say? The muscle spindle, it senses the stretch. Okay, and this in turn, it leads to the relaxation of the antagonistic muscle. Okay, and this process is known as reciprocal inhibition. So as I mentioned here, the muscle spindle is located within the muscle belly and stretches along with the muscle itself. Now when this occurs, the muscle spindle is activated and causes a reflexive contraction in the agonist muscle and relaxation in the antagonistic muscle. I will tell you all this with an example later, okay, which will be easier to understand. So, the types of MEP. Now, here I mentioned three types of MEP, which is basically used by the therapists in our day-to-day practice. So, the first type is for psychometric relaxation. Now, this technique, which is also known as CIR, this technique, it works on the concept of autogenic inhibition. So, we already have seen what is autogenic inhibition. That is, I mentioned that the muscle, uh, like suppose, and I'll just tell you that how the technique, how we perform the technique basically. So whenever a resistance is given, suppose, to a muscle, and as I mentioned before, that we give some maximal. Here I mentioned 10 to 20% because many of the literature say this, but I would like to add on here that Sir mentioned yesterday, 25% is the resistance applied by the therapist. Now, why 25% is it is easier for the subject understand what is 25% here. Okay, so that is why 25% of resistance is applied to the muscle. Suppose we call the side muscle as agonist and the opposite muscle as antagonist. So first 25% resistance is applied. First, we check the restrictive barrier, which is very important. Right, restrictive barrier is what I mean by this is the first resistance what we get when we check the movement, right? Where after that maybe the patient feels a lot of pain, so we don't go to that pain range, but below that is the first resistive barrier to the muscle. So we ask the patient to resist in the opposite direction. The patient needs to inhale during this effort, and after the isometric contraction, the patient is asked to relax and exhale. And while doing this, a gentle stretch is applied. Okay, to and the joint is taken to the new barrier. The muscle is taken to the new barrier. Yeah. Now this process, this whole procedure, is repeated according to the tolerance of the patient, but a minimum of you can say 7 to 10 seconds hold with 5 repetitions is more than enough what is needed. All right, and if tolerated, uh, if we get a better range by doing this, and if it is tolerated by the patient, we can go to around 2 cycles of this PIR. So that's PIR. Then we come to uh, PFS, that is post facilitation stretch. It is just the extension of PIR. What I mean by this is the PIR technique once performed, okay, and when the patient relaxes the muscle, the therapist further gives a stretch, okay, and increases the flexibility of the muscle. So there is an extra stretch given by the therapist. The rest whole procedure remains the same. It is only the extra stretch at the end of the movement. Okay? Now, next is the reciprocal inhibition. It is also a type of inhibition. It is mostly again used by us. Here, as I mentioned, in reciprocal inhibition, that is a type of it's works on the concept of reciprocal inhibition, and here the following steps are performed. We take the affected muscle is placed in a mid-range position. Again, we need to check the restrictive barrier. Then the patient pushes the restriction barrier, whereas the therapist completely resists the effort or allows a movement towards it. Okay. Now this is followed by research. Now here what I mean is, I will still explain this giving an example of biceps and triceps, which will become easier for you to understand here. Okay. So if the tight muscle is the agonist, we give resistance to the antagonist. Okay. And this causes a relaxation in the agonist. And same way, the resistance given is submaximal, or a little more resistance is given as compared to PIR, because we are giving it to the non-affected muscles, right? That is the antagonist. Okay, so we can give a little more resistance there. Now, which causes relaxation of the agonist. And repetitions remain the same, right? So, what are the indications of MED? As I already mentioned that in the previous slide, that basically we use MED for relaxing the muscles, lengthening of the muscles, which increases the flexibility, which in turn increases the range of motion. Yeah. Uh, Athletes who use MEDs, it's not only used by patients, but normal healthy people also. MEDs, like athletes use these as preventive measures to guard against future injuries of muscles and joints. It is used by, you can use MEDs for individuals who have limited range of motion, which is satisfying dysfunction in the neck, in the back, also in the shoulder and other joints. We can treat chronic muscle pains and stiffness or any kind of injury with anything. Yeah. What are the contraindications? The contraindications are very few, but yes, we need to mention them. We cannot give it to infants for obvious reasons that they don't understand. All people who do not understand like what amount of force has to be applied, so if they don't understand, they don't follow, then we cannot give anything, because in fact we can tend to injure or cause strains and strains, right? Yes, the breathing factors, open wounds, severe osteoporosis, bowel disease, all these functions, if the anything is contraindicated. Yeah, so I was mentioning about the examples, like in reciprocal inhibition, what happens exactly. So let's take an example of the elbow. Okay. Now, first we will check the pathological barrier. Now, your pathological barrier means the restrictive barrier, what I was talking about. Now, if the range of motion at the elbow joint is restricted, right? Then, what we do is first we check the restrictive barrier, right? Then we give the patient, this I'm talking about the reciprocal inhibition, right? The patient is instructed to contract the triceps against the therapist on the foot. So I give resistance to the triceps, right? Now, resistance to the triceps will stimulate the muscle spindles of the triceps, okay, which activates the type 1 F1 fibers, okay, and this reaches the spine and that activates the inhibitory interneuron, okay, the synapses, which in turn inhibits the synapses into the alpha motor neuron, the biceps. Okay, so that is why it is called as, which causes relaxation basically. So the whole process here is like the muscle spindles of the antagonistic muscle. Okay, this is activated. This causes the type 1 afferent. This sends type 1 afferent signals to the inhibitory interneuron. Okay, in the synapses in the spine, which in turn sends signals to the alpha motor neuron into the biceps, which relaxes the muscle fibers of the biceps. Okay, and this is how the biceps will relax. So the patient is instructed to relax the triceps, and the patient's arm is passively extended as permitted by the biceps muscle. So once the biceps muscle relaxes by this technique, the therapist can further go into elbow extension, okay, and achieve the new barrier. And then further, the whole process can be repeated as tolerated by the patient. So this we talked about reciprocal integration. Now I'll give you an example of what is, uh, yeah, so this is the type of reciprocal inhibition I was talking about. Now, where we said that through lengthening the bicep, we give resistance to the triceps muscle. Okay, muscle spindles are activated, type 1 fibers are send entry signals to the interneurons, which in turn send signals to the alpha neurons of the biceps muscle, which will act as the fibers. Okay, now let's come to the PIR. PIR, as I mentioned, it is resistance given to the same muscle which needs to be stretched. Now, how does this work? The elbow, we go to the elbow only because it becomes easier to understand. So first we again check the restrictive barrier, this side by our palpation skills. What is the restrictive barrier for the bicep? Then the patient is instructed to contract the bicep against the therapist counter force. So the therapist will give resistance to the bicep. Okay. So around 25% of resistance is given to the bicep, and the subject is asked to contract or make isometric contraction. Now this action activates the GPOs, okay, GPOs of the tricep, which activate the type 1 PFM fibers, okay, which again send signals to the inhibitory interneuron that synapses onto the alpha motor neuron of the bicep, okay, thus producing relaxation. So we already mentioned this, that in PIR there is the work of the Golgi tendon organ, okay, and whereas in the reflex immobilization there is a muscle spindles which cause relaxation. So the GPOs, they get activated and they cause relaxation of the muscle, right? Then the patient is instructed to relax the biceps, okay, and patient's arm will again passively extended as permitted. Okay, so whatever new barrier we have achieved, the therapist will again extend the elbow into that direction. Okay, and again this technique also can be repeated as tolerated by the patient. Okay, and whatever range we are achieving, sometimes it's well tolerated by the patient, so you can go for a second cycle of the whole technique. Okay, that is, as I mentioned, that you can go around 5 to 7 contractions with a hold, right? Around 7 to 10 seconds hold, right? Yeah. So just to summarize, very important to know that how NAD is working is basically on these principles of muscle spindles and Golgi tendon. Okay, and the whole reflex arc which we have learned in our basics, which I already mentioned during the example, right? And I mean, reference book for this is by Leon Chato, Muscle Energy Technique, a very good book. So maybe you all can go through it to get the details of it. Just to summarize, I'm not taking down how the techniques are applied because this will be taken up by Sir in the webinar, which is on Sunday. We are all looking forward to it to learn how MEP techniques will be applied to different joints and know the position. I think the most important aspect of using muscularity technique is you should be very good with your hands. You should know the restrictive barriers and know the correct position in which technique to use where. That is one thing, right? And the position. So these are two important things which I would like to mention here. Um, yeah. So that's all from my side. Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to present this session today. And thank you. I would not forget to mention a big thank you to all my family members who are a big support for me. And obviously a big thank you to all the participants. And thank you to your question. Over to you, sir.
Yes, Dr. Darshana, can you come a little bit forward?
forward.
Can you adjust the camera position so that your full face will be visible?
Okay.
Little bit more.
Just a minute. Okay. Now. Can you see me now, sir?
No. It's only the forehead.
Oh.
Till here only it's visible.
One second. Okay. I'll stop sharing. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's better. Perfect.
I think there's a problem with the camera of my laptop, so I was like, another camera there. So that's the reason.
You're keeping it, but it is getting tilted. Okay. That laptop is.
Yeah. Now.
Yeah, this is better.
I'll keep it tilted. Better. Yeah.
The floor is open for questions. So, if anyone has questions, you can put it in the comment. Dr. Raksha Ram, can you come on the screen? You can unmute and you can ask directly question. Dr. Raksha Ram. The hand then. You are not asking questions.
I would like to mention that for me, MET was a really new topic. Okay, and as you already mentioned that taking sessions itself, when you go through so many literatures, you can learn on your own. So teaching is another way of learning. So yeah, I would definitely motivate all the participants who are here to get into this. I never knew how to make a presentation, or but I learned. I learned from AOMPD platform. I'm so happy about it. MET was something like was untouched by me, and today I know now what is MET. Any questions?
So we need questions from participants on the chat. Okay. Dr. Pooja, you want me to unmute you? Dr. Pooja, yes, go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Yes,
Am I-
please.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Dr. Pooja. Hope I have made the presentation very first time focused. Like, because they're all looking forward to third webinar on super.
Hearing the first prayer. My side question is that is there any specific precaution before proceeding this technique? Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say specific function, but from experience, I would add that like the patient has to understand first, what is the amount of resistance we need to apply. I think that is the most important thing. Yes, of course, the general condition of the patient, as I already mentioned in the contraindication, So when we take a history, we need to check all these and then go ahead with the technique. So two, three things important is one is the patient condition, general condition. Next is the patient, you have to communicate in a way and you have to be convinced that the patient understands what is the exact amount of resistance which is needed. And I think this will come only by practice. Okay, so the more number of patients we see, we can get it. Otherwise, I don't see anything you would like to add on to this.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, my question site is basically from when the patient comes to the spasm or pain, there is some another technique you have to prefer before this, or we have to giving that direct treatment after evaluation.
Yes, yes, in spasms, we do give energy that is basically the reciprocal inhalation technique what we give, right? So we don't touch the muscles which is very painful. Now, for example, if a patient comes to us with neck pain, okay, spasm and catheter of shoulder and neck, then we will not touch the muscle directly, but we will use the RI technique, where the antagonistic is stimulated, which relaxes the tight muscle or in spasm specifically, right? And if the muscle, there are two different things. One is spasm, right? Where the patient will have pain. One is tightness, where the pain won't be the major factor, right? It will be the restricted mobility. So there we will apply a PIR.
Okay.
Okay. So we need to judge because even in spasm, MET is there.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Do we have any more questions on the chat? About the background noise, few of the participants have put background noise as their background noise. When in the foreground you have information, okay, it's our choice to focus whether on the noise or on the information. Okay, so sometimes that happens. I don't know. Now it is silent. Okay, the Darshana's microphone. Otherwise, it could be even a fan which is nearby the laptop, which is directly hitting on the microphone, can produce a sound. Okay? So these things come up. Even in a conference, when you are listening to a direct lecture, also background, so many noises are there. Okay? So if your focus is on the background, then noises will come even in a silent room. Okay? So I would suggest that try to get the information, okay, more. And if it is tough because of technicalities, your internet, for example, voice breaking, you are not able to hear, other people are hearing. If 30 plus participants are there and 3 are facing the difficulty, you should know that other 30 are able to listen. So then it could be fine with the speaker. Okay, so there's no problem with the speaker side. And if rest of the participants, if you want to, definitely you know that you are attending AOMPT webinar means after the webinar itself, the Zoom link will be sent to all of you. So registered participants only. If you don't register, I will not send. Okay. Don't think that you can just attend and you can just do window shopping and then you can go. Okay. AOMPT is not a showroom in a shopping mall. Okay. So, or is it also not a certificate shopping? Okay. So both the things you cannot do. Only it is knowledge that matters. So make sure that you register formally, because I want to know which college you are from, where you are practicing. Physical therapist, full I want to know physical therapy. Okay. Non-physios, those who are attending, should not get certificates. Okay, from the AOMPT, they should not have. So these are things we have to ensure. And you register, then you will get the video link. And when you are getting the video link, you can watch it. And then you can write your review or the comment in the Facebook. Okay. But the attendance screenshot is mandatory. In Zoom, your live video with the madam or with me. Okay. So you have taken that screenshot. So that screenshot you have to submit as the attendance proof. Okay. So that's mandatory. Why I don't tell that in the beginning and why I'm telling now is because to see how many of you stay till 7:45. Okay. There are a lot of things. We should not give certificates. Some people, if we send the links, people are commenting, people write the review before the webinar only. Okay. They are completing it. Webinar was excellent. Okay. Extra, it's useful topic. Okay. General terms they put. Okay. So people are like only bothered about certificate shopping. And they're thinking that a free webinar is like a trial room. Okay, you can just wear anything and then remove and go. So same like that, they think in a trial room you go, you keep on taking things and keep wearing. Same like that. Every time they keep attending only free webinar for certificate. Okay, so that should not be there. So people have to learn, and an adequate presence. You might have started by 7:20. You would have participated because you got the link late, but at least you should be there in the discussion. You should participate. I am not making question as mandatory for certification, but either way. So, as Madam was aptly pointing out, okay, if you are as the extent of your knowledge, be humble to accept that I am doing it for learning. Okay. Nowadays, students are presenting in a manner where they are taking the session. I am doing it to show that I have learned. Okay. No. Okay. Be it anybody. Okay. Nobody is an exception. And we should always ensure that we are the student. Okay. So we should learn, and everybody will learn from each other. Okay. But at the same time, not all the questions can be answered by anybody. Okay. Even God comes directly on the earth also, he cannot answer all the questions. Okay. The way God answered questions, even in Bhagavad Gita, in the Hindu mythology or the Mahabharata, itself shows that his answers were actually thought-provoking on Arjun. And Arjun got the answer himself by understanding that points of Krishna. Krishna didn't give answer. Okay. So don't think that Krishna was answering all Arjun's questions. Arjun's own mind only answered his own questions after listening to the Krishna. Okay. So remember that the answers are actually within your mind, how you take it, how you accept it, and what you actually do with it, the information. Okay. If it is to do with the precaution, okay, each and every technique might have a precaution. For reciprocal inhibition, what is the precaution? That means antagonist, when you are contracting, the agonist which is in spasm should never get activated. Okay? Because sometimes what happens is the patient, when they do the antagonist, willingly or unwillingly, the spasmodic muscle is always ready to get activated. Okay? So you have to make sure that you passively position in a maximally exaggerated spasmodic position, so that spasm will never get activated. It's actually the positional release, the comfort position. Okay? So you maintain, then you give reciprocal inhibition. Okay? So that you can minimize. And the second situation which coming to post-isometric relaxation is the barrier. Okay? Because we are not going to the end of the range. Okay? We are in the initial part of the resistance. That is the barrier for us. Detection of the barrier is a big challenge. Okay, experienced clinicians will detect the barrier earlier. Okay, so if you are moving the joint, you're taking it becomes slow. There itself barrier. Don't think that the extension is still here, so here is the barrier. This is anatomical barrier. We don't want that. We want only physiological barrier. There the resistance begins. So that is important for the success of PAR. Of course, contraction, as Dr. Darshana rightly pointed out, the intensity of contraction on that. In PAR, what is the other precaution which you have to take is the muscle's activation should be possible. If muscle is not getting activated, because shortening or tightness of the muscle can come in an overactive muscle also or inhibited muscle also. Inhibited muscle also, if you are making it in a maintained, the joint is maintained in a shortened position, so the muscle will become tight. Okay. Overactive muscle, you don't maintain the joint in the shortened position, but because it is overactive, always inner range it is contracting, so outer range it will not allow. So it will become tight automatically. Okay. Middle range has become inner range. Okay, that is overactive. Underactive means middle range has become outer range. Okay, so underactive means. But the joint position will lead to adaptive shortening or adaptive lengthening. Okay. So length and tension. So length can be short. but the tension generating capability can be overactive or underactive. So if a muscle is underactive and it is tight, definitely post-isometric relaxation will help. Okay, because we are activating it, and we are actually activating in an optimal level only. So it is easy for the muscle to contract. That means the tight muscle, which has to be a little bit weak. Okay, don't think that tight means it is strong. Okay, tight can be strong or weak. But the same, if the tight muscle is strong, then you go for post-facilitation stretch. Okay, that is. I want the participants to contribute and also our committee members. Post-facilitation stretch and hold relax. What is your opinion on that? Even Dr. Darshan also.
We use maximum resistance for hold relax. Whereas in
Facilitation stretch also you are using maximum resistance.
yeah, right. Uh,
In hold relax also you are taking into lengthened position, maximally lengthened position. Then you are giving maximum contraction. After every contraction, when it is relaxing, you are taking it to the maximum lengthening further and further in hold relax also. In post facilitation stretch also we are doing the same. Okay. So these two goes synchronous. Okay. Although the terminology is one is osteopath, other one is neurology. Okay. Vladimir Janda was a neurologist. And then we have the Norton was, in that one is a neurologist, other one is a physical therapist. Okay. So don't, what to say is, this kind of scenario where tightness is present with overactivity. If the muscle is overactive and it is tight, definitely post-facilitation stretch will help. Okay. Why that overactive? Why are we activating more? Because underactive, you cannot tell maximum contraction. Okay. In a muscle which is underactive, if you are giving maximum contraction, it will not be able to do. Fatigue will come. Okay. Inappropriate technique it will come. And overactive muscle, you can tell maximum contraction very easily. Okay. But after the maximum contraction, when you are maintaining the maximum contraction, definitely the relaxation that is ensuing will be much better compared to the resting relaxation. That will allow the lengthening. Okay. So remember that it's not that the tightness means we give post-isometric relaxation. We have to see whether it is underactive muscle or overactive. Underactive means post-isometric relaxation. Overactive means it is the post-facilitation stretch. Okay. Combination of both are given with the ischemic compression, with the strain counter strain as the integrated neuromuscular inhibition techniques. Okay, INIT. Okay, that's an extension of muscle energy techniques. It's not under the MET per se. Okay, just for information. More queries in the chat. Yeah. Can you read the question that Rizwan has asked about autogenic inhibition, physiological property?
please speak about what is autogenic inhibition. Yeah, that's what we were talking about, right? So now, yeah. Um, there is one autogenic inhibition, as I already mentioned, that it is the therapist gives resistance to the same muscles. Like for in the biceps example, I explained to you that if you want to for relaxation in the biceps muscle or you want to lengthen the biceps muscle, then you should give resistance to the biceps itself. Okay, which will cause the activation of the GPOs, okay, and this in turn will cause relaxation. So this is how autogenic inhibition will work. So that is the post isometric relaxation technique what the sir was talking about.
Basically, in the belly, muscle belly, we are using the voluntary contraction, okay, to control or inhibit the what is called as the efferent inputs to overactivate that muscle. Okay. For example, like we have muscle spindle, we have the extrafusal, okay, alpha motor neuron, which is the motor part. And when we activate the muscle belly and we are trying to inhibit the same muscle, okay, we are using the autogenic inhibition. Okay. So that is the physiological base for that. Okay. When you activate the muscle means what happens is actually the shortening of the spindle. Okay. If you are stretching, quick stretch or tapping the muscle belly, then only spindle gets activated. Okay. When you are contracting the muscle, the spindle actually gets relaxed. So it will not get stimulated. So the descending will not come. Okay. The efferent, which is there, it will be inhibited. Pyramidal tract will tell that there is no stretch, so no need to contract that muscle. So pyramidal tract will inhibit that reflex. Okay. So that is autogenic inhibition there in the belly. In the tendon, remember that a quick stretch for a tendon will initiate the monosynaptic reflex and then the efferent activation of the muscle, stretch, contraction of the muscle. But if you have a sustained contraction, if you are maintaining it for 10 seconds, the belly contraction, what happens to tendon is tendon gets lengthened. It's maintained in lengthened position. So that is a deactivation of the Golgi tendon artery because quick stretch will activate. Sustained stretch, GTO will not get activated. Okay. So the efferent, what is actually there activating that muscle, that will also get inhibited. So it is actually, we are utilizing the principles of basic neurophysiology, activating the belly to inhibit the same belly, and then activating the belly to or maintaining the tendon stretch more longer so that it will inhibit the belly also. Okay. So contraction when you are maintaining also has some amount of heat that is generated. And that heat can be useful to release the adhesions between fascia and the muscle. Okay. Or it can be between the fascicles of the same muscle. So which can allow more movements or further efficient contractions. Okay. So we are utilizing that muscle itself for that muscle's recovery. Okay. Not just the inhibiting, although physiologically the term is there, autogenic inhibition. Okay. Remember that we are using the autogenic mechanism. Okay. It means auto means the self, the muscle's own mechanism to treat the same muscle. Okay. Don't keep raising the hand if you cannot ask the question. Previously itself, I given you the slot. I told you to unmute and ask the question. You're simply raising the hand. What is the use? Okay. You should type it in the chat so that we can read it from the chat. Thanks everyone. You don't have to raise your hands. Okay. I know definitely Ritu ma'am, if she's at home, she would have asked a question. Traveling. So what we need to understand here is, in physical therapy, we have this outer range, inner range, middle range, okay, muscle contractions. So muscles energy in the middle range is kinetic energy. In the outer range is potential energy. Inner range also potential energy or inertia of rest, because movement and then it stops in the inner range. Okay. In the middle it is kinetic. So kinetic to potential happens conversion, and then again kinetic Then again, last kinetic to potential happens. Okay. Initially, it is potential to kinetic. Okay. The inertia of rest to overcome. So energy is always been converted throughout. Okay. Whether it is isotonic or is it isometric, because isometric contractions for postural stability also requires energy expenditure. Okay. So we are utilizing the muscles activation forces. So osteopaths named it as energy. Okay. Because they are more concerned about the physiological body as a whole, homeostatic processes, all that. But various groups, sometimes they will name it as myokinetic release. Okay. And then certify the practitioners, certify the instructors. Okay. We could have also done that, but AOMPT will not change the name of the technique until substantial improvisation is there. Okay. We are adding on with the methodology or the application. In the sense, more than half of it is being changed, and then we are improvising and applying, then definitely I'll register it as a new approach. Otherwise, existing technique, we should improvise it in our instruction as much as possible and see that we can use these techniques better, so that when we do research on these techniques, the efficacy will come actual efficacy. Otherwise, we don't know fully, then what happens? We do it on patient will not improve, and we end up telling that MET not effective. Okay. You can't choose a population of low back pain and do MET. You have to choose specifically. Myofascial low back pain, I am going to give MET, which is isometric isotonic. If it is articular MET, facet joint MET, I should choose that. If I am telling pelvic somatic dysfunctions, means when I am using MET, I should tell whether I am using MET for the pelvic floor, I am using the MET for the piriformis, okay? Whether I am using the MET for the muscles which are attached above the pelvis and below the pelvis, the adductors and then abdominals, okay? Quadratus lumborum, iliopsoas, various muscles, okay? So I need to be very, very specific in that. You can't give MET for nerves, but you can give the MET in the neural offloading and underloading positions, which was actually incorporated in the neuromanual therapy, the NMT approach of the AOMPT. So we should see that how much active forces can come in therapy, so that earlier the patients will recover. And if it is not for MET, then which technique we can use? Okay. Because the contribution of the therapist is patient positioning, okay, localizing the force, and then the counter force. The therapist gives the counter force so that the activation or inhibition is balanced, and then we are taking it on reassessments, okay, ongoing reassessments. So it's much better than a motor learning where you have to give pressure biofeedback and you keep training. First, you activate the mobilizers using muscle energy, correct the dysfunction. After that, you use the stabilizers for motor control, then mobilizers for functional recovery. Okay. So that should be the plan in the active process. Dr. Darshana, there is a point about spasticity.
I would say that when we are stretching, that's a passive stretch, right? It will be definitely inhibition only, but it will not put it as MET. It will be a passive stretch which causes inhibition, right? In socket muscle.
Sometimes therapists use the term MET stretching, okay? For the post-facilitation stretch, they use the term MET-based stretching, okay? PNF-based stretching, okay? So these are very misnomers, okay? We should not use the term stretching for MET, okay? We are actually trying to inhibit or activate, and we are going to restore the length or relax the muscle, okay? But when it's a tonal abnormality, when it is overactive, and if there is a shortening, definitely you have to do the post-facilitation stretch only. You can't do reciprocal inhibition because antagonists are totally not in a position to get activated. Okay, and it's not a spasm; it's only spasticity. Okay, upper motor neuron. And the second thing is in spasticity is whether isolated contraction is possible. If only elbow, whether the patient can contract. Because if it is mass synergy, shoulder, scapula, elbow, wrist, everything together, it is getting activated. You can't apply post-isometric relaxation. Okay? Even if there is a inhibition, the weakness of the muscle, and you want that weak muscles to be getting activated with the lengthening, you can't do that. Okay? You need isolated. For example, the 3 motor recovery, Brunstolms, okay? Where the subject is nearly like normal. Okay? Ischemic stroke, infarct, old infarct, recovered perfectly. And cognitively, because in neurological patients, especially spasticity, you have to think how much the cognitive status of the individual is. Okay. If it is hemorrhagic stroke, which is spasticity, means isometric contraction you will not do. Okay. Because it might increase, and if some aneurysm might again rupture. Okay. Why to take the risk? Okay. And our goal is not that much a peripheral effect. Okay? We have to concentrate on the motor recovery from the brain. But if there are adaptive changes in the tissues that has happened, in Tardieu scale, you find a tightness in addition to the tone abnormality. Definitely, you can use the post-facilitation stretch. Then use the post-isometric relaxation if individual activation is present. In MRC grading, for example, 2, okay, above. Individually, you can test that muscle, and the patient can do isolated. Okay, you are telling elbow, bend the elbow means in the gravity eliminated plane, they can do that at least within the synergy, elbow flexion, okay, but voluntarily controlled. Okay. Out of synergy is the 3 Brunstolm motor recovery. So these things you have to keep in mind. It's not just that the spasticity will indicate MET or not. With the spasticity, what is the issue? What is the cause for the spasticity? Okay. How the picture will change. Right. Anyway, now I'm entering into the neuro rehab because of the popular demand that we should train neuro rehabilitation also, because physical therapists are practicing neuro. Neuro techniques are also manual techniques. Okay. So there's absolutely, it's not like orthopedic manual physical therapy, so it's only orthopedic. Okay. Orthopedic surgeons itself, they are managing the neuro patients. Okay. So there's absolutely, that's the reason why stroke neuro rehabilitation, we are going to see an exclusive certification course on neuromanual therapy, integrating neural mobilization or nerve massage together with the functional training, okay, task training. And we're going to see a 1 day practical demonstration. Okay. I'm trying to see if I can get a patient here. Okay, if the patient comes, I'll directly take it with the patient. Raksharam, I don't know nowadays whether he's really a qualified physio or he's a student. Nowadays, students have started putting doctor before their name. After the Allied Health Council approved by the government, I think they are all feeling like doctors. Yeah. What you got? Thank you. This how to treat sciatica? Any points, Dr. Darshana, using MET?
Yes, first is definitely we need to assess and evaluate like from where the fat is taken there, basically. It can be whether it is intense, the rupile hormone, muscle, hamstring, or it is at the vertebral level, right? After that, I think maybe will be very useful if there is piriformic cycle. Definitely we can do a PIR and yeah, improve the flexibility there, which will in turn release the pressure over the sciatic nerve and the relief and symptoms. So it's a very broad thing because uh, it's not only that sciatic pain. We have to find out first what are the reasons for the sciatic pain, and then we can decide the related technique to it. So I wouldn't say only MEG will work because it will be again like you know what do you say multiple approach sort of a thing, right? So we cannot only depend on anything. After assessing, after knowing what is the reason for the pain, we can definitely go for it. If it is classical dysfunction at the lumbar level, we need to take that also, as you mentioned. So
Because
what level and where and yeah.
sciatica is a neural condition. Okay. It just tells the pain in the distribution of sciatic nerve. Okay, that's all. It does not tell the cause of sciatica. It does not tell what are the coexisting dysfunctions present in the sciatica. Okay. And as Madam told that, we need to see what is the presentation there. Okay. For example, I am telling a layman example. Dr. Darshana, I like Dr. Darshana very much. Okay. Does that mean that everybody, whoever named Darshana is there, will become my best friend? Okay. Darshana means I have to smile. No. Okay. I have to see the nature of the person, whether that Darshana is really this Darshana. Okay. This Darshana is definitely good or not. Then I talk, then I interact, then we smile. Understood? So don't go by the name. Sciatica means sciatica, this is the treatment. So one patient sciatica came, I gave the treatment, another patient sciatica. Oh, this is also sciatica. No. That means you are considering every darshana as same. That's the biggest in every nature of every person. Okay? I might be having a favoritism. Name Ritu means very sincere learner. Okay? But I see one Ritu who is a BPT student, not at all interested to learn. It is that nature of that person. There's nothing wrong in that Ritu name. Understood? So same like that, you cannot tell sciatica is an unpredictable disorder. No. It's the body's response to that condition, okay, which comes as clinical presentation. COVID, everybody is talking about second wave of COVID-19. Everybody responds to COVID-19 differently. It depends on the immune system. Don't think that you never got COVID. For all those people who never got infection, don't think that I didn't get infected. You got infected, but your immune system was better to tackle it. Your habits and your food, nutrition, everything was proper, so you managed it. With the virus, you are still living. Okay? Don't think that there is no coronavirus, COVID-19 in your body. Okay? So patients are only COVID-19 patients. You are not COVID-19, never. Okay? You have the virus. Because that virus has the potential of spreading so much in the globe, you think that you are out of the globe. Okay? Separately where you are in moon or what. Okay? So it's always our homeostasis, our immune system, how the way we react, which comes as the clinical features. It cannot come as clinical features as long as the body can manage it. Okay? Every disorder name is like that. Nature of the dysfunction. What are the impairment that is present? If there is no muscle adhesions, no muscle tightness, no muscle underactivity or overactivity, why to give muscle energy technique? Okay? The indication of MET is not sciatica, nor is it contraindication also, nothing. Because name does not matter. The behavior matters. Okay? And the same way, when it's primarily a neural problem, choose neuromanual therapy. When the numbness, tingling and all that is there. Because in neuromanual therapy also you can give the MET. So there is absolutely fine. But the positioning of the leg, even in a piriformis syndrome with pseudosciatica, okay, whether you have to keep the sciatic nerve offloaded or sciatic nerve also to be loaded, whether you start with sciatic nerve massage, then you go to the piriformis. Okay, so it becomes neuromanual therapy, NMT. So choose the approach depending upon the primary dysfunction, which is actually the functional limitation, the main cause for the functional limitation. Don't go by the MRI, which tells that massive disc bulge is there. So don't ask me that whether you can do MET for a disc bulge. Okay? You are treating patient. You are not treating the muscle dysfunction in the patient. If the muscle dysfunctions are there, definitely MET will be indicated. Okay? So that should be the picture. The nature of the person is more important than the name of the person. Okay? Radiological name will be different. Physician's term will be different. Nothing matters. What we have is the biomechanical presentation in the subject, which indicates our contraindications. Okay? Cancer, is it contraindicated? Malignancy, is it contraindicated? Come on. What is wrong in the cancerous region? Is having spasm. Okay? He's having cancer in the oral cancer with the spasm here. Okay? And he is not able to close the jaw, not able to open the jaw because of spasm. Won't you do cold pack? Although when thermotherapy contraindicated for cancer, for the spasm you won't keep. TENS was contraindicated for malignancy. Won't you keep TENS for the pain? Nowadays, TENS are favoring all this. Then why not use reciprocal inhibition? Understood? So whatever can benefit the patient as much as possible and carefully, we should always attempt. But physician should be kept in the loop, okay? Communication, consent, and make sure that your clinical environment is medico-legally safe, okay? Then you can use it and then report it as a case study. Afterwards, the future people will perform that as the regular treatment. That's how knowledge grows. Even if MET can be applied to nerves, in the neural loading position, you are giving an MET combined one. Okay, from the neurodynamic position, you are giving contraction of all the muscles to come towards the offloading. Okay, you want to do that as a neurodynamic MET, your wish. There's absolutely anything. Okay, there's no limit to the development of knowledge and science. Okay. So keep thinking, keep thought provoking, okay? Make sure that you can do justice, but never think two patients are the same, okay? So that's important. I think now we can close the session, okay? So we are ready to wish the participants the best of luck. Although they got the last minute information, still they joined. And whoever joined the session are waiting till the very last minute because they know that I'll give last minute some specific instruction. Okay, so then only they will get the e-certificate. Okay, and that is also one thing. And of course, if they are enjoying the session, they feel that they are learning something. Definitely, I welcome all of you to join the MET course. Okay, that Sunday one, as Madam was also telling. She has completed almost all the courses of the AOMPT, but still she is learning. Okay, she's attending and learning. She's sharing her knowledge also. So same way, enroll in the course. We have the pelvic somatic dysfunctions tomorrow. It's a very, very important region for women's health also, and generally as a manual therapist and as a physical therapist. You should not miss the pelvis because pelvic dysfunctions, if you don't correct, whatever you do with hip muscle strengthening, it will not work because the origin of the hip muscle is pelvis. And whatever you do with the knee, it will not help because the Q angle is influenced by the ASIS, which is pelvis. Okay? Quadriceps for the knee. Understood? And S2 is the center of gravity. So if there is pelvic dysfunctions, it will change the position of the COG of the body itself. Okay. And moment the COG is changed, everything will change. Don't think about base of support, which is foot and ankle problems. Okay. So if you miss the dysfunctions in the pelvis, you are actually not at all treating the lower extremity. Okay. So don't underestimate that. Don't ignore that. Don't think that the pelvic dysfunctions will get corrected itself. No. Okay. There are a lot of dysfunctions which are maintained because pelvis is in abnormal mechanical advantage. Okay. We have a difference between right and left, which is natural, but there is some other difference which actually creates unilateral symptoms in the lower limb, which can be functional leg length discrepancy caused because of sacroiliac, iliosacral, or pubic symphysis dysfunctions. It may not be measurable on the inch tape. It may not be visible with the eyes also. Point is, movement restrictions, symptom reproduction, or functional activities like sit to stand. That means posterior rotation of pelvis to anterior rotation. Dominate. Okay. So kinematically, we should see how well we can apply. Tomorrow session, we have the pelvic dysfunctions MET, which is part of the certification course, the certified MET practitioner on Sunday. So the same Sunday course, I have kept sessions distributed. I've taken the lumbar facet joint dysfunctions. So you'll get that video also. Pelvic dysfunctions, that video also you'll get. All sessions are taken with the dual, like either attend direct, but direct attendance is only upon negative COVID-19 test reports and also vaccination reports. Okay. Because the second wave in Bangalore is very aggressive. They've again enforced the curfew, night curfew. Okay. Cases are spiking again. Okay. Those who go out of Bangalore cannot go back, come inside Bangalore. Okay. That much it's a strict regulation. Why? Because public is not cooperating. If public is cooperating, no need to be strict. Either way, as clinicians, stay safe, and especially with hands-on techniques, maintain the precautions and give your best for the patients, because patients have been waiting for 1 year. Okay. And you cannot allow them to be without physical therapy. You know how much long-term functional consequences come. So upgrade your skills, learn better, use it effectively, spend less time with the patient, treatment, but more on assessment. Okay. So that should be the goal, and wish you all the very best. Learn the MET, learn the osteopathy, integrate it within the physical therapy, be the best physical therapist. Okay. Good luck to Dr. Darshana, and stay connected, and keep taking more sessions, okay, for the members. All right. See you. So everyone will send the attendance screenshot. Okay. So with Dr. Darshana or with me, the screenshot has to be there. The video presence screenshot. Your picture with our picture. Okay. That screenshot is mandatory. The rest of it is the 2 Facebook links which I'll send, which you are supposed to comment and then submit the screenshots also. So 3 screenshots you will submit. I will ask your name for certificate. Then you give your name. Okay. And then within 24 hours, you'll get a certificate. Okay. So good luck to you all. Bye-bye. I was discussing the same in the Facebook Live. I was telling how free webinars are taken for granted by many of the participants who think that keep just attending only free webinars. Okay. Other thing is, free webinar means they behave very rudely. They think that, you know, why are you not giving certificate? Free webinar, na? Namesake you are taking, give the certificate. They think like, we are doing it free just because to stimulate the learning. Okay. It's not because we have to give certificates to everybody, so we are taking free webinar. No. Okay. And it is not the computer which is issuing the certificate. Raksharam will put it as Dr. Raksharam if he is a student. For example, I'm telling an example. He might be a physio. Yuganshu might put as Dr. Yuganshu. He will still get the certificate as Dr. Yuganshu because computer website is issuing the certificate. No, this is I am issuing the certificate direct. Okay, that is why I check the ID proof. That is why I take every proof for everything. Okay? So make sure that your certificate from AOMPT is not the same as your certificate from any other academies, because these are verifiable. Okay? It's not just given for namesake. Lot of security features added even in free certificate. So when you are getting it, you should deserve it. You should be worth it for the knowledge. Okay? So if you cannot attend, inform me that, sir, I'm held up in this work, I'm not able to attend. If it is, you are paying the fee, definitely you will inform, because you need the money back or at least the certificate back. Okay? So the same thing, you will also ensure, if you show the true spirit of learning, whatever technical problem you have, you are not able to access Facebook, whichever, I'll still issue the certificate, because I want to issue certificate to the people who are interested to learn. Okay, that's the only thing which I'll check. So that's the only I'm explaining my own situation here. Okay, so good luck to all the MET learners. And MET is another term. Cardiopulmonary also we have 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes. Okay, physical activity where movement is life. Spend your energy in the METs, okay, to learn the MET better, okay, and become a better MET practitioner. Okay? So good luck to you all. Good luck to Dr. Krishna. See you. Well, yes, Dr. Krishna. Yes. Close the session.
Thank you. Thank you to all the participants here.
Okay. Are you reading the comments? Dr. Krishna? See you. Bye-bye.